The Drifter has access to 5 melee weapons in Teshin's Cave. Unlocking them in-game also provides you with the blueprint to build them for your Warframe too, while buying them with Platinum will unlock them instantly for both Drifter and Warframe. I'll show you what each weapon does and how it compares to others in its category. I'm Nick Engineer, let's solve a practical problem. Once you've completed the Duviri Paradox quest, you'll be able to select alternative melee weapons for the Drifter to use in Duviri. You have Sun and Moon by default, while the others require 50 to 60 Pathos Clamps to unlock. You get these Pathos Clamps 10 at a time by taking down the Aura Worm as part of the Duviri experience or lone story. If you're into late game with access to Steel Path, then you can get 15 Pathos Clamps instead from a Steel Path run, though that'll be higher level and with additional mechanics. However you choose to go about it, you can unlock the weapons in Teshin's Cave, where you can also try how they feel before going into Duviri. Do be aware that the Drifter can only bring one melee weapon at a time in Duviri, and the Drifter cannot use those weapons anywhere else such as in the Undercroft. Your Warframe, however, can use them like other weapons once unlocked. Each melee weapon functions not only differently from one another, but they also act differently in Duviri for the Drifter compared to for your Warframes. Let's look at the Drifter side of things first. Sun and Moon, Teshin's dual Nikanas, are a basic pair of weapons. You can both attack and block quickly, giving you reasonable control during a fight. If you hold the block button and power attack with the secondary fire button, you'll charge up and unleash 2 waves of electric damage. These waves are guaranteed to apply an electric status effect to each enemy hit, dealing damage over time to them and very close enemies. This special move takes a long time to wind up, so do be careful not to be in the line of fire when you use it, or lower health drifters may be killed. Syam is the next weapon available in Teshin's Cave, and is a single Nikana. What it lacks in blade count, it makes up for in being an equally quick and deadly weapon to the Sun and Moon in Duviri. You'll again have good control over a fight, both to attack and block. For the Syam, its special move performs a whirlwind attack that also lifts up enemies. While it doesn't apply any damaging status effect, the sheer damage of the attack itself is very effective. The downside is that you must be right up close to enemies to hit them, exposing you to attacks while you do it. The third option in Teshin's Cave is the two-handed Nikana. I'll be quite honest with you, I'm not sure how this is supposed to be pronounced. Azothane, or even Azothane, like to rhyme with Daphne. Azothane might well be correct given the Greek vibes of Duviri, so I'll go with that for now. Pronunciation aside, this is a weighty weapon with powerful but slower strikes. This means you do need to be more careful that you don't leave yourself exposed and unable to block due to a long swing. The special attack for Azothane sends out waves of blades across the ground, dealing cold damage up to a decent range and applying the cold effect, slowing enemies down. As impressive as it looks, this doesn't actually deal a lot of damage, and I found it a bit underwhelming. The fourth weapon you can grab breaks out of the Nikana category to give you the Edun, a Polearm. This weapon is much more mobile than the Azothane, with swift twirling attacks that help hit multiple enemies simultaneously. You should have no issue using normal attacks to great effect here. As for its special attack, this is a very quick to use maneuver which kicks up dirt in a modest range in front of you, knocking down each enemy hit and dealing a small amount of damage. The damage isn't great, but the quick speed of this attack and knockdown means you can give yourself some room to fight any remaining enemies without being overwhelmed by a whole group as one. Lastly, we have the Sampotes. Again, I'm sticking with a roughly Greek style pronunciation like with the Azothane. The Sampotes is a hammer class weapon. Hammers are slow and heavy, and the Sampotes is no different. Great for well placed punishing strikes, but also great at overextending yourself. For its special attack, you unleash a line of small, fiery explosions. These explosions can hit enemies multiple times over, and applying a heat status effect with each explosion, burning them over time. This special attack is a good opener to soften up a cluster of enemies as they approach, or when they have yet to notice you. For Drifter gameplay, this is really all you need to think about. If you like using special attacks, I'd say the Sampotes, Sun and Moon, and Syam have the most interesting and impactful options. For more general fighting, I prefer quicker attacks from the Sun and Moon, Syam, or Edun. Take your pick to match your own personal flavour really. As for equipping the weapons to Warframes, we not only gain the ability to mod the weapons to change their effectiveness, we also get different attacks. All 5 special attacks do not carry over to the Warframe gameplay. Starting again with the basics with the Sun and Moon, the dual Nikanas lose their special attack and gain, well, nothing. While they're unique in being the first dual Nikanas in the game, they have no special powers of note. I'll get into a more stat-based comparison a little later on. The Syam also loses its special attack of doing a whirlwind attack, but in exchange it has a unique heavy attack. Most Nikanas deliver a forward blow on heavy attack, knocking down the enemy struck and applying slash status to make them bleed out. The Syam instead throws out a wave of damage with innate heat, travelling a long distance out to a max of 70 meters. Well, that's the intent anyway. It seems the waves break if the floor isn't smooth, which can completely neutralise this attack. Until that's fixed, keep that limitation in mind. The Azothane again loses its special attack when put into the hands of a Warframe. Instead, this two-handed Nikana gains a special move when doing a normal attack while holding aim or block. This attack plunges the Azothane into the ground, then retracts it while dealing a shockwave in a large area. This shockwave does not benefit from almost all mods, meaning it starts weak and comparatively only gets worse as you fight higher levels. On the plus side, it is a good source of combo if you're inundated by enemies, but that's about it. The Edun, as you might expect, gives up its special attack. For the Edun, it has a unique heavy attack, where you throw the polearm forwards where you're looking. The Edun travels in a steep arc, making longer range throws hard to aim. Wherever it lands, it'll damage what it hits for a modest amount, and a moment later, the polearm will explode, dealing a modest amount of blast damage in a small range. The polearm automatically returns to you as part of this attack, allowing you to continue the assault however you please. Overall, the attack is a bit unwieldy and not particularly strong, though can be useful against tightly grouped up enemies. And then finally, the Sampotes trades its special attack of a line of explosions for two separate quirks. On normal slam attacks with the Sampotes, you'll again send out a line of explosions. While this has lost the ability to burn enemies, it gains the ability to launch most enemies into the air, incapacitating them for a short time. This isn't particularly great at killing in most circumstances, but it can take the heat off you or an objective you are trying to protect. If that doesn't cut it, you can instead use the heavy slam of the Sampotes. This, in addition to being a heavy slam, sends out 3 lines of larger explosions, covering a wide cone. Enemies caught in these explosions will be flung into the air at high speeds. In open areas, this can completely remove the enemy from where you're fighting. Again, the damage does not scale with mods, but for low levels, this will be devastating, and at high levels, still a strong dispersal ability. Quirks aside, these weapons can all be used as ordinary melee weapons too, just like with the Drifter. With the right stances, Warframes can perform some perhaps more dramatic moves, but ultimately you're still hitting enemies with melee strikes. What's truly incredible are the stats these weapons have. Remember, all of these Duviri melees can be acquired at Mastery Rank 0. The only requirement to get any of them is to take down an aura worm a few times and gather some Duviri resources. The Syam, a Mastery 0 Nikana, can be compared to the Mastery 4 Nikana called, well, Nikana. These two use identical moves, heavy attack aside. Despite the Syam being technically lower level, it comes with a higher critical chance, over twice the status chance, nearly double the base damage, and a higher attack speed. Comparing them using a pretty standard hybrid build, meaning we're using both critical and status modding, the Syam ends up with over 2.5 times the damage output of Nikana, and likewise over 2.5 times the slash output for dealing with armoured units. This is a huge jump. I'm not expecting a newer player to have this kind of build available, probably more like this one, but the point remains just how strong Syam is. If we compare the hybrid build against the quest reward weapon, the Skirjati, the Syam ends up with a slightly lower slash output, but still much higher damage output. This makes it still effective against armoured units, and much more effective than Skirjati against everything else. Just to be clear, the Syam isn't the strongest Nikana. Nikana Prime will out DPS it by about 20%, and is roughly twice as effective against armoured targets using the hybrid approach. But still, that's comparing a Mastery 0 weapon against a Mastery 12 Prime. Syam is strong. This trend continues with the other options too. The Azothane shares its category with the Pennant, Tenet Livia, Tatsu and Tatsu Prime. Of these, the first you'll likely get access to is the Mastery 7 Tatsu. That'll give you a weapon with a lower attack speed, much lower critical stats, and ultimately a fraction of the damage potential compared to the Azothane. Even the mid to late game weapon, the Tenet Livia, has comparable stats to the Azothane, bringing a higher slash component, but similar damage stats with the hybrid setup. Again, Azothane is a Mastery 0 weapon. The Edun can be compared against the Mastery 2 Orthos, except it's not even close. Orthos has abysmal critical stats in comparison, lower status chance and attack speed, lower total damage, and ultimately provides a fraction of the output of the Edun. You also can't throw the Orthus at your enemies. Now again, the Edun isn't the best polearm in the game. It is however a close competitor to both the Gwandal Prime and Orthus Prime, and is arguably better than the Corum. You need to complete nearly the entire main storyline to access the Corum. Likewise, the Sampotes Hammer obliterates the stats found on the Mastery 1 Magister, instead being closer to the output of the Kuva Shield Egg, which, let me assure you, isn't a hammer you just pick up on a whim. The Kuva Shield Egg's output is quite a bit higher than the Sampotes, but then the Sampotes also has the ability to forcibly recruit enemies into the Tenno space program. Even with no direct comparison to be made to the Sun and Moon, it also is effective as a melee weapon. It doesn't quite keep up with the effectiveness of the Edun or Syam in my opinion, but it's still a far cry from the weaker weapons typically found in the earliest parts of the game. So these 5 melee weapons are all you have in Duviri, and each has its place. Outside of Duviri, they are punching well above their mastery rank, able to be used even into the Steel Path. They're not the strongest of all weapons to be had, sure, but they certainly pay for the time spent getting the Pathos Clamps. These can be good additions to your arsenal, especially if you're still in the lower half of the mastery ranks. Grab them when you can. That's all from me on these weapons. If you found this guide helpful, make sure you subscribe for more, and as always, tackle worms, get weapons, and fight well, Tenno.